I'm Dr. Erica Bove, and welcome to the Love and Science podcast. I'm your host, and also the founder of Love and Science, Thriving Through Infertility. I'm so excited you're here today. With over a decade of experience helping thousands of women just like you, I empower professional women to build their families with confidence and compassion. Let's dive in. Hello, my loves, and welcome back to the Love and Science podcast. I have a distinguished guest today. She's a friend, she's a colleague. Her name is Dr. Vanessa Calderon. She is an amazing human who I met at the Physician Coaching Summit in November. And since I met her, I've wanted to have her as a guest on this podcast. She is a deeply intelligent, deeply thoughtful, deeply humble human being, also a deeply powerful human being, which is super relevant as we talk about how to have the most empowered fertility journey possible. Welcome, Dr. Vanessa. So good to have you here.
Thank you so much, sweet friend. So happy to be here with you.
Absolutely. And so I do like to share some accolades because I do think it helps put things in context because you've worn a lot of hats over the years, right? So you've been a grassroots activist. You've been a department chief, in the world of emergency medicine. You've been a wellness director, an educator, a trauma-informed master coach, a speaker, a podcaster. You've led retreats. You have a podcast, which is called The Authentic Path, which is an amazing podcast for people. And so my understanding right now is that you do primarily coaching, right? In terms of helping people build their wealth and their power and live their most authentic life. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Anything else you would add to those accolades as people, because you have even as a kid, right? You were building businesses, you have over 20 years of this experience. And this stage of your journey is the coalescence of so many leadership roles and so many like spiritual roles and so much of what you've experienced, you are synthesizing in to serve the world.
Yeah. The only thing I'd say is really at the core of what I do is really just help people come home to themselves. That's how I see the work I do. The mission of Alderaan Co, which is what the name of my business is really just to transform lives and focus on helping women and really all people just come home to themselves. Because once people are safely back home and safe in their bodies to be their most authentic selves, that's where magic happens. That's where they become the most resourced, where they can create their desires. Everything happens once you've made that journey home. And it's a beautiful, transformative experience. And it's so humbling to get to walk people home.
That is so beautiful. And I'm very aligned with that mission. I'd love to start by asking you how you realized in your own life that you were not at home within yourself. Like how it's usually like we're the wounded healers, right? We help other people where we have struggled the most. What did that look like for you? How do you help people realize they're not at home? And how do you bring them back?
Yeah, a great question. I was completely blind. I hadn't taken whatever the pill is in the Matrix, the red one, I think it is, or the black. I can't remember what color it is, but I was completely blind. I was living my life on default, which is I think what most people do because I don't think people know that there's another way until you wake up. And so because of that. Living my life based on traumas that had been unhealed, and not just my trauma, but ancestral trauma, generational trauma, systems of oppression that exist in the world, like colonization and racism. All of that stuff was subconsciously driving me because this, I think, Erica, which is, we think that we're making our decisions in this world based on our conscious awareness, but conscious awareness is really only driving 5% of what we do. The rest of it is being driven by subconscious and autonomic habits. And so that means 95% of the results that you're creating in this world are not intentional if you don't wake up. And so for me, what that led to, I'm a, physician by training, as you mentioned, but what that led to is living my life on like 100% like drive at everything that I did, and which meant that I was achieving really, really fast. So I did a lot by a really young age. I was a department chief 1 year out of residency. I was a med director and department chief. Yeah, and that's like a big pat on the back, but it's also like, hold on a second, what did you have to sacrifice to do that? And so for me, it was a lot of they say the road to burnout is really it's really a journey of self-abandonment, which I think is true, because what it meant is I was completely disconnected from myself, from my body, from my soul.
Mm,
I knew what drove me at the heart of everything I did. It was always about service, and I knew that that was true, and that was sort of my compass, or my North Star was always like, was I doing something that was in service to the world? And it was easy to say yes, because as you mentioned, I was an activist before I became a physician, and then I was a physician. Like, all of these things are always to be in service. But I think
mm,
the shadow side of all of that is that I was doing it in a way to gain external validation, because I didn't have that for myself. I didn't
yeah.
know what it meant to feel proud of yourself. I didn't know what it meant to actually feel worthy or deserving of being
Mm.
in the same room as people that didn't look like me, as men, or and I'm a 100-pound, 5 foot Latina, like, with, like, olive skin. And that comes with a lot of stories. I'm a first generation American, and so the story of the immigrant, and so all of these things that I had not come to love in myself yet. So my journey home meant that I had to realize I was missing a lot of self-compassion, a lot of love, a lot of space to be me, to love me, to feel who I was in my own body and in my skin, and to make decisions that really centered me, and that it was safe to center myself, because I am a good person with a good heart, which means if I center myself, I'm actually helping make the world a better place. Because when I'm home in my own skin, which is how I one of the things that I love to help women do, because the women that are drawn to work with me are all mission driven, purpose driven. They all want to make the world a better place. And so when you are able to come home to yourself, you're just much more resourced. You think about how expansive you can be whenever you give yourself
Yeah.
what it is you need. And then from there, creating from that place is just, it's just magic.
Yeah. Well, that's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. One thing that you taught me recently on one of our calls is this different idea about growth, where instead of saying, okay, I'm going from point A to point B, and if we don't quite get to point B, then we beat ourselves up or something, that we start where we are and then we grow outwards. And that has resonated so deeply with me. And I think it's just a testament to how differently you think about these concepts. And I just think it's so beautiful, the work that you've done on yourself, and that you are able to now deliver that in a way that empowers so many other people. So thank you for sharing that. I think that kind of sets the stage for the rest of our conversation. Before we started recording, you had shared with me, some difficulties that you had in your own fertility journey. And I was wondering, I think it's so hard if you're a listener and you've never heard of anybody who's gone through these things, or maybe only online. Can you share a little bit about your journey to build your family? I think that would really help
Yeah,
people feel less
yeah,
alone.
of course. And I'll tell you, I grew up in a home where we didn't talk about sex, our bodies, or any kind
Mm,
of pregnancy issues. You like, and also coming from a long lineage of the like this trauma, the unhealed trauma of a woman's body was to serve a man, and to
mm,
essentially like make, keep the peace at home by doing those types of things, having baby, all of those types of things that
yeah.
machismo, which is Spanish word for patriarchy, sort of teaches women. And so when I got on birth control at a really young age. I was in high school. I think I was like 17, and I was having horrible menstrual cycles. And so I got on birth control really early to support that. And it was really, really helpful. And then I just assumed I would not get pregnant until, I don't know, until I had achieved all these things, is what I thought. And so I got married in residency, and my husband wanted to have children at a younger age because his dad was older when they had kids.
Mm,
And so he wanted to make sure that we were being thoughtful. We knew we wanted to have more than one child. He knew about the concept of advanced maternal age. And so I got off birth control, and I was able to get pregnant with my first kid pretty quickly. And so my thought was like, oh yeah, it's not hard. Boy, was I wrong. And so the second time we tried to get pregnant, I assumed it was going to be the same thing. And so here I am. This is old versions of Vanessa, controlling
mm,
all these things, planning so perfectly. Oh, we're gonna start trying at this time. I'm gonna get pregnant at this time. I'm gonna go on maternity. And we couldn't get pregnant. We got pregnant, had a miscarriage, got pregnant
mm.
again, had a miscarriage. And then we got pregnant a third time. And the third time, we didn't have a miscarriage right away. The first two miscarriages were before like 8 weeks. And so I'm an ER doc, and I see women having these unplanned kind of spontaneous abortions all the time, these miscarriages all the time in the emergency department. And so before you're a certain age, I just feel like it was normal. So the first time I had a miscarriage, I'm like, yeah, no big deal. It happens all the time. The second time, I was starting to get a little nervous. And so then, but I was like, oh, it's early again. We'll just try again. And then the third time, the pregnancy was lasting long enough that I went in to get a blood test, and I had a pretty high HCG, the hormone that we check for pregnancy. And so, and then now it's like 11 weeks and we were still pregnant. And so I was like, oh, great, and then came like 11 and a half, almost 12 weeks. And I started having abdominal cramps, and then I started bleeding. Oof, I'm going to get a little emotional here. Yeah, that's okay. And so I started having another miscarriage, and that last one was tough because we were so far along, and I just assumed it was going to stick. Yeah. And it was a day where I was department chief at the time, and I was working a full-time clinical load in the emergency department. And I had a shift that day, and it was one of our busiest shifts. It was in the middle of the day, and I started miscarrying at about 10 in the morning. And I was supposed to go into work at 2:00. And so 2:00 is coming up, and it took me about 45 minutes to get to work. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go to work. Like, what do you do? And so I went to work. I was actively miscarrying. I was having the worst cramps. And I remember a very, very good friend of mine who was one of the nurses at the hospital. She was charge nurse that day. And she asked me, she's like, what's wrong with you? Why are you so grumpy today? And I had to do everything to not cry in front of everybody. And so I went to the bathroom and I composed myself, and I was like, I'm just having a period. And I just kept going. Anyway, so it was really, really tough. It was really hard. We went to meet a fertility doctor who checked my hormone levels and pretty much said that I wouldn't be able to get pregnant on my own. But as it goes, we left that. We talked about whether or not we'd have fertility, but there was something in that conversation that just made me feel, I don't know, it's like a sense of okay, I'm just going to let this go, because we already had one child and she was healthy and we were so happy. And it was such a blessing that we even had one. So then I was like, if we can't have another one, I don't know if I want to put my body through fertility. I wasn't sure, but I was like, you know what? I'm just going to, whatever. So if we can't get pregnant, we can't get pregnant. And once I let it go, as it goes, we ended up, so the fertility doctor said, come back after you have another regular period, because we met with her when I was actively miscarrying. And I didn't have another regular period. After that, I think we just ended up just living our lives, and we got pregnant. And we were so blessed. We called our son. His name is Luca. Luca. It means light.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that, Vanessa. I think most of us have a story if we ask. And I do think that there can be so much healing in the sharing of it, because, you didn't know that was going to happen. You didn't know that was going to be the final outcome. And we really don't talk enough about secondary infertility, recurrent pregnancy loss, and just that uncertainty, and then letting go, and then it happened. But just understanding what a dark time that was, and giving voice to that, I think is so powerful. Yeah.
Thank you.
And also, I mean, I did the same thing. I retracted for a vaginal hysterectomy in residency as I was actively miscarrying. Why the F do we do these things again? But we feel like previous versions of ourselves, right? We feel that we have to, we can't take any time for ourselves. We feel like we can't prioritize ourselves. We have to always, patients always come number one. And I just don't think that's the way. And so I just want to say to anybody who's listening to this podcast, learn from us. If something is happening, if you get bad news, if you're miscarrying, if something isn't going as planned, it's okay to take a day for your mental and physical healing. It's essential, actually. And I always think, what would you tell your friend to do, right? You would obviously tell your friend to stay home and miscarry at home and grieve and all those things, but that's where self-compassion comes in, right? Because we just don't do that ourselves, or if we're not taught to do it, it doesn't come naturally. So
that version of me was, I think, afraid to ask for what it was that I needed, because in my mind, what I had made that mean is that was weakness, that vulnerability was weakness. And I know now that is just not the case. And I even look back and think, and for the listeners, for you listening, imagine if one of your colleagues called you and said, oh my God, this is happening in my life right now. You would probably say, of course, I'll cover your shift. No big deal.
Yeah, exactly.
And I know the person that was on backup, of course, they would have come in to cover my shift had I asked,
Hello, my loves. I am so excited to share this news with you. If you are a female physician navigating the fertility journey and you want a structured, evidence-based plan, I have created a free resource for you. It's called the Physician Fertility Roadmap. I have created a guide to help you optimize your chances of pregnancy and a successful outcome over the next 6 to 12 months. Check out the link in the show notes. Love you. Bye. Yeah, that's so powerful. Is there anything else that this version of Vanessa today, looking back at that former version of yourself, is there anything else that you would want to give her or
Just
say
a
to
huge
her?
hug. Gosh,
Yeah,
I just love her so much, and it's all
yeah,
okay. Like so much compassion. It's okay that that's what you thought. It's okay that that's
yeah,
what you did. All of that's okay.
yeah, yeah.
It's
It's all
okay.
okay. Yeah, that's so beautiful. So I'm so, so grateful that you have your family. And, I think these experiences transform us too, right? We're never the same person on the other side of them than we are before. And I would imagine that you bring that into your coaching as well, right? And thinking about my people who are listening who are on the fertility journey, usually it's not a short journey, right? There's a very few people who see a fertility doctor and then have it, get pregnant or have a treatment cycle. Like it's usually a long drawn out months to years journey. And the people who find me in my practice are people for whom their treatments aren't working. And their REIs are shaking their heads. They're like, we don't know what's going on. My listeners, my patients, my clients are getting more and more discouraged because, another cycle didn't work, we still don't know what's going on, like all those different questions. Thinking about your work, helping to help people reclaim their power, whether it's wealth or career or authenticity, like what can you say to the listeners who are going through this process and they're getting discouraged, they're feeling like their battery is draining, and they truly don't know if it's going to work? They're feeling very threatened that it might not at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think when you're naming a lot of those feelings, they do sound disempowering. I'm
Yeah.
afraid it's not working. I've tried everything I could.
Mm-hmm.
Something must be wrong with me is usually at the bottom of that cycle, right? Of that thought cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So what I will say is that those are disempowering thoughts and feelings, and they're also normal thoughts and feelings that anybody would have on the journey. And the road to empowering as opposed to disempowering is really understanding that. And this might not be what everybody wants to hear, but I will just say is understanding that your desires are coming, if your desires are coming from a pure place, what is meant to happen is going to happen. And, Erica, you and I talked a little bit about this before, which is if you are meant, like if you have this deep desire coming from a really good place of wanting to be a parent, that will happen for you. If your desires are pure, it will happen for you. It may not happen in the way you think it's supposed to happen, but it will happen for you. And so what I will just say is this, on this journey of life, when we start losing our agency or losing our power and giving it away to certain things like
Mm.
in this case fertility treatment, like you're giving your power away to fertility treatment, all of a sudden saying that something is wrong with you because it's not working or that something's wrong with your body. But that's just another roadmap to show you, hold on a second, why would I give my power away to fertility treatment? What if nothing is wrong with me? What if this is just not the way it's supposed to happen? What if I was open to allowing it to happen the way it's supposed to happen? Then what would be possible? Because for some people, just release. So what that is an attachment. It's an attachment to the fertility treatment, and it's attachment to what that's supposed to do for you and your body.
Yeah.
Because an attachment, as Buddhism says, is the root of all suffering. Because once you're attached to that, what happens is if you don't get it, you don't think you're going to be okay, which
Mm-hmm.
means that there's safety stories, there's a bunch of stories attached to that. Who am I? I'm not worthy, I'm not deserving, all of those stories attached to that. And that, so in the world of, we didn't name this, but I come from a long line of indigenous healers from Mexico and Central America. And
Mm.
so I grew up speaking words of ancestral or indigenous wisdom, and a lot of it sounds like new age stuff, but honestly, it's stuff that's been around for millennia. That
Right.
was passed down from my great grandparents down to my great grandparents, all the way down to me. And this is the language that we spoke in our house, which was really earth-based language that connected us to the earth and to the cosmos and to everything around us, unifying us to something so much bigger than us and the sense of universal consciousness. And so I say that because when we think disempowering thoughts, what we're honestly doing, think about how you feel when you think those thoughts. You probably don't feel very good because you're decreasing the way you're feeling in your body. You're decreasing your energetic vibration to shame, to guilt, to sadness, to, unworthiness, all of those types of things. And what we feel in our bodies is essentially what we are pulling towards us. And so when we're feeling those things, you're probably taking actions that are disempowering actions. Maybe you are going and overeating because that's how you're dealing with the guilt or the shame in your body. Or maybe you are overworking because that's how you deal with the emotions that you don't want to feel. And so there's a lot, or maybe you're drinking or whatever it is that you do when you don't feel good and you don't know what to do with those feelings. We start taking actions like that. And then we create results in the world that we're not proud of. And it's this vicious cycle that we fall into. And let me give you a different way to think about it. Let's say you're not having success with these treatments, with these fertility treatments. One way to think about it is like, what's wrong with me? Which is shame, disempowering. Another way to think about it is like, well, okay, this isn't happening. All right, well, is there another way? Is another way possible? Or what if, and this is kind of, some people think maybe magical thinking, but I'm just gonna, again, this comes from my ancestral lineage. What if I just let it go? What if I just released this? And this is the act of surrender. And the act of surrender, I think, is one of the most courageous acts any human can take, because we all believe that we are in control and in charge of everything that we're doing in this world. And then something comes and blows us over the head. It could be your tire blows out, or here you are thinking that you were going to get pregnant and now you can't. And all of a sudden you're like, holy smokes, my world is turned upside down. This is me, when I when I couldn't get pregnant the second time. I thought I was, again, I had perfectly timed it so that I'd get pregnant and be able to work through the winter, because that's when the flu season was the worst and when we get the most patient volume, and I wanted to be present for my department. And then I'd have my kid in the summer so that I could then take parental leave in the summer.
Yeah. Yep.
It's like, so, and then I got hit over the head being like, hey, release control. You're not, and the more and more I was able to surrender, and this is what I'm offering your audience, the more and more you're able to surrender, the more you realize like, okay, the way it's supposed to happen will happen. All you need to do is focus on your desire. What is your desire? If your desire is to be a parent, let that come to you the way it's supposed to come to you. Release all of the other disempowering thoughts that you have about how it was supposed to happen, because that's attachment and that creates suffering.
If you're listening right now and finding yourself nodding along, this is usually the moment people realize that they want support that's specific to them. In addition to this podcast, I offer one-on-one fertility consults where we look at your full picture with both strategy and compassion. You can learn more in the show notes. Now, let's get back to the conversation. Ooh, that is so powerful, Vanessa. Like every hair on my body is like on edge right now. I'm standing on end because what you said resonated so much. And gosh, you said so many beautiful things. I think you're right that the core of a lot of the lack of success that I see is an over attachment to the outcome. Right. And how could we not be attached to this outcome? Because the stakes are high. We want to build our families. It makes total sense. And yet when we attach to something external and it has to happen on this timeline and in this way, and we sort of plan it out, that, I mean, I truly believe, yes, we can talk about the spiritual ramifications. I also think on a very physiological level, it's not good for us. Our adrenals get engaged, our blood pressure gets higher, our vessels vasoconstrict. Like, it's not good on multiple levels. And so the problem, or I guess not to code it as a problem, but the stuckness I see for people is that there's this belief that if the fertility treatments don't work, that people are not going to be okay. And I get it, because I've been there too. And it sounds like you've been there too, right? It's like, if this doesn't happen, I talk to people all the time. My husband and I really want to have a family because that's the missing piece in our lives, and that's going to complete our lives. This sort of like this has to happen. Otherwise, I've gotten everything I wanted in my life. I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm a successful person. Like, why can I not work harder and have this be the outcome? I truly am not going to be okay if this doesn't happen. And so one of the things that I help people do is help them realize you are going to be okay. You can create a meaningful life in so many different ways. You have a meaningful life now. If this desire is yours, how can we start to detach from the specifics to maybe open up many channels? For some people, that's donor egg IVF. For some people, that's gestational carrier. For some people, it's taking a break from fertility treatments. And I've had people stop fertility treatments, long IVF journeys, and truly surrender to the process and say, okay, we're going to regroup. And that's when it happens. Every person's journey is their own journey. But I think it is like, if I could bottle up that, attachment to the outcome, the courageous act, like you said, of the surrendering, that is where I see that people start their what's meant to happen for them. And it might not be through the original channel. Sometimes it's, oh my goodness, in this, person in our lives had this unintended pregnancy and that baby needs a home. I've seen that happen before. I've seen it. And then that person goes on to have biological children. Like, I've seen it unfold so many different ways, but I believe that there is the desire in the heart and there are souls that are meant to connect with that. And we have to attune that resonance to make that happen.
Yeah, that's 100%. I love what you said about the physiologic response to attachment. And I want to take that one level deeper. I know a lot of your listeners are really smart women. And so if you think about this physiologically, even molecularly on a cellular level, what's happening is when you're in resistance, when you attach yourself to an outcome, what you are creating is a form of resistance. Yes. Resistance is the opposite of acceptance. It's the opposite of being open. So when you're attached to the outcome, it has to happen a specific way because we have attached, what we are actually attached to is not the outcome, it's what we've made the outcome mean about us or about the world around us. And so what's happening when you're attached to the outcome is you create a resistance. Even in my body right now, I'm hunched over because that's what it feels like. It's a resistance. And so if you think about it on a molecular level, you are literally resisting so many things. Yes, cortisol, yes, hypertension, yes, all of the vasoconstriction that happens. You're literally in resistance mode. It's like you're pushing everything away. And so when you open yourself up to a different possibility, it creates a level of receiving receptivity. You're open, you're surrendered. Okay, divine spirit, source, God, whatever you believe in. Okay, I'm open to this happening the way it's whatever way it's supposed to happen. I let this go. I'm going to let this go. I'm open to whatever is supposed to happen. And literally that it's like a deep exhale. You turn on your parasympathetic nervous system once you surrender. And now you're in receiving mode. You're literally open and receiving, vasodilated. You're in, and it's cardioprotective. All of those things happen for you. And so of course it's easier for things to come to you when you stop resisting. In my life, what I have noticed is, and this is after 10, 15 years of like consistently pushing away everything I wanted because I thought I was bringing it to me because I do believe that I create everything I desire. And I know that sounds a little bonkers, but because I do the work and I open myself up to doing it. But when I first started this whole journey, I realized I do, but man, it's hard. I push so hard, harder. How harder can I? Oh, I haven't done it yet. Let me go harder. And my solution for everything was working harder, pushing harder. And over the last 10 years, as I've been on my own journey home to myself, I've realized, oh my gosh, it's actually so much easier and so much faster when I stop trying so hard, when I stopped pushing, when I stopped attaching myself to every outcome of every goal I had set, when I let all that go and I was in deep surrender, oh, look, everything just happens. And I still do the work, I do my part, but I don't have to continue to push. And because I'm not in resistance mode, I'm not attached, everything just happens. And it's a flow. That's what flow state is. That's when you're in flow state.
And that's so true. I've heard my clients say, Erica, the less control I try to have, the more peace and calm and even control I feel. Right. And then we are aligned with that divine source, God, whatever we believe that is. And that is when I see the magic happen in this process. And like I said, it's not always the strong plan A. It's not always in this way. Sometimes there's twists and turns along the way, but when that little soul comes in, there's just this indescribable joy and peace. And
Mm.
it's so very beautiful. It's vulnerable. I think that we need to become more comfortable with vulnerability, because to hold on tightly and to resist and to be attached and to be trying harder, that is it's a very masculine energy too, right? We talk about conceiving as receiving. When we do open ourselves up, it does feel strange, especially if that's not what we've been doing for most of our lives to make things happen. So, that
Mhm.
shift to a little bit more or a lot more vulnerability and surrender, I think, is really important. But it can, I'm just going to name it, can feel kind of scary, because you know that just is counterintuitive to what we've been taught.
Yeah, and I will just say, I can't remember where I read this, probably one of the Brene Brown books I read a long time ago, which is, we all think vulnerability is weakness, but vulnerability is probably the biggest act of courage. When you can be honest and say, this is what I want, I'm kind of scared it's not going to come this way, but I'm open to letting it come the way it's supposed to.
Yeah,
Okay, and
that's right.
that act of like exhale and surrender, that is vulnerability, and that is so brave and so courageous, which is why I always say the biggest act of a spiritual warrior is surrender. That is like the most
Mm-hmm.
courageous act of any spiritual warrior. And I think about you, Erica, and the work you do as sort of as like this beautiful spiritual warrior, because you're connecting souls to humans that want to help usher these souls into the world. And I just think that that's one of the most beautiful divine acts.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely my calling, and I see it as sacred work, and it's working. I mean, the wild thing, Dr. Vanessa, is that over 80% of my clients have had success, either in the form of an ongoing pregnancy or an actual live birth in the last 2 years. And if you think about it, it takes 10 months to gestate a pregnancy, and there are ongoing pregnancies right now. I mean, it's just so beautiful. But I think, we need to think about, like, what is the work? What are we doing? How can we encourage these things to happen, right? Like, how can we be vulnerable in a safe place, right? Because we do need to do that. And like, what do we do? I don't know. It's the surrender part of it, I think, is really, really tricky for people, but it's almost like a discipline. It's almost like I always ask people, is it a moment that you surrender? Is it a process over time? I think that it's almost like steeping into a pool almost. We get the big toe in. We're like, okay, this feels safe. I can let go of this. And then we go a little deeper and we go a little deeper. And we realize that when we can like plug in spiritual, like, that movie, the Avatar movies, where they like plug in their ponytail to like this intense divine network, like that's what it is. And the power of community, we're not meant to do this alone, we're not meant to do this in isolation. And when we can connect to other beautiful souls, humans who are on the path, that's also where the magic happens, is when we're connecting with other people and not doing it alone.
100%. That's more
Yeah,
magic, I think, that you bring to the people that you help and serve, because
yeah,
they no longer feel alone, not just because they have you, but because they have you and the stories of people that you've
yeah,
helped and the community that you've built. It's really, really powerful. If we want to go a little bit deeper on surrender, or at least I want to go a little
yeah.
bit deeper on surrender,
Please, let's
because you
do it.
mentioned like, what is the act of surrender? What is that? So I will just say, when have you, for those that are listening, when have you let your body feel safe? When do you feel the safest? Like,
Mm,
think about, I think about, for example, my wedding day, I come from, again, a long line of ancestral and generational trauma, marital trauma, stuff like that. And I never thought I was going to get married. And then my husband and I fell in love. And I was like, oh, yeah, we'll just live together forever. Why get married? That's such a waste of time. For him, it was a very different story. He had a very different experience, and he wanted the actual act of marriage. And so I went to work to heal all my wounds, because I was like, okay, well, if I decide not to get married, it's not going to be because of this trauma or because of fear. If I decide not to get married, it's because I don't want to get
mm,
married. So after doing all that work, we decided to get married. And I remember on my wedding day having all of these like fears and stories. But when I was with him by ourselves, before we actually got married, we sat by ourselves at the little altar where we were going to get married. We sat down together, and I remember feeling like, oh, well, this feels safe. This feels good. Like
oh,
being with him feels good. And that was safety. And so that is an act of surrender. When you can feel safe in your body, that is a very good sign that it's safe for you to
mhm,
surrender. So for you listening, ask yourself, when do I feel safe? When is
mhm.
it that and I have this one client, she's an incredible OBGYN. She's just brilliant. And when she's in her work, like when she's practicing clinically, she's like, oh yeah, I just always know what to do. All these things, I just know. She's like, but when this happens, like outside of the hospital, she doesn't feel as connected. I'm like, oh, interesting. So you are running intuitively when you're in the hospital, it sounds like. You're super connected, you know what to do, but then you start doubting yourself in these other spaces. Isn't that interesting? And so
Mm-hmm.
when is it that you feel surrendered? Because when you tap into surrender, what actually happens is you are allowing your highest self, your inner wise woman, whatever you want to call it, to be in the driver's seat.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why you're able to tap into intuition and all these other things that come to you when you surrender. That's why surrender is so powerful. And it comes from a place of safety, safety and believing that
Yeah.
it's possible, believing that it's safe to surrender, and then just being open to it. Be open to like just trying, where can I surrender? And so I think it's when you said like, what is it? I think it's one of those things in life that's kind of an infinite game. There you never get to a place where you're 100% surrendered,
All
but you
right.
can always do it for the rest of your life. And sometimes I just play around and ask myself, like in my meditation this morning, I was like, where else haven't I surrendered? Like, what else can I
Yeah.
release control of, Because I firmly, firmly, firmly believe that I'm guided and protected. I know that my ancestors are all around me. I know that I'm guided and protected. And so I firmly believe that. I firmly believe I'm safe. And I know for a lot of people that sounds like bananas and that sounds like naive and all of those types of things. But I'm also like, I'm a smart
Yeah.
person and I know
Yeah.
like I know how to like, I'm not going to go out and walk in the middle of the night and do something crazy because that's bananas. And yes, I feel
Yeah.
guided and protected, but I'm also going to do my part, which is like, I'm not going to go drive a million miles an hour drunk or
Right.
whatever, because that's just not for me. Like that just doesn't make sense. I'm guided and protected and guided by an intuitive sense. And I know that my ancestors are all around me. And so I
Mm.
feel super safe to surrender.
Yeah. Makes total sense. And I also think that when we are practicing surrender, it's kind of like when we're meditating and our guided meditation guide says, where else can you soften?
Yes.
Right? Like, okay, is it like in my face? Is my tongue on the roof of my mouth? Is my jaw? Like just doing that scan of like where else can I give up a little control here? Where else can I let the ground support me? Where else can I ease into this posture? Yoga for me is actually where I feel the safest for some
Mm.
reason. I don't know why, but like there's something about the poses and the community in the room where that's my safe place, which is everyone finds a little differently. My friend Rachel has this saying, which I think will be helpful to everybody here, is when we have an intention, like say somebody's going in for an embryo transfer, this or something even better, because sometimes the plans that the universe has in store for us are even better than the ones we would concoct for ourselves. And that is where we unite that highest self that is internal with like the whole magnitude of the universe. And Vanessa, just like you, I feel my ancestors around me as well. And I actually feel ancestors in the room. I'm just going to call it out again. People may argue with me, but I know what I experienced, that there are spirits in the embryo transfer room that I can feel. I can feel my grandfather's, who died before I was born. He was an OBGYN, delivered like 16,000 babies. I was the first grandchild not to be delivered by him because he was deceased at that point. But his spirit is always with me, always. I'll say, Papa Bove, I need some help here. She's whatever, bleeding, whatever. Like he's fantastic. And I also feel the spirits of the ancestors of my patients, especially if they're open to it. And this especially happens when somebody's loved one has just passed away. And
Mhm.
sometimes it's this pattern that I see where somebody's loved one is sick and dying, transfer isn't working, next transfer doesn't work. And then that loved one passes away and the next transfer is successful. It's something that, again,
Mhm.
there's forces beyond ourselves. And I really wanted to ask you, Dr. Vanessa, like, let's dive into your indigenous wisdom and your ancestral wisdom. How do you see that playing out, and what can you offer our listeners about forces that they may not even be tapping into yet that maybe they're conspiring to help them?
Yeah. Well, first I'll say the veil is OBGYN is such a poetic practice. You're there at the beginning of birth and at the end of birth for some people if you're a gynonc, and I mean at the end of life. And I think The veil is very, very thin during certain parts, during
Mhm.
certain transitions. And one big transition is close to death. So when people are around circling hospice or beginning of life, the veil is very, very thin. And by veil, if for those that are not used to that word, it's the veil between the seen and the unseen. So what we can see with our eyes and what we can sense around us in the spiritual world. And
Mhm.
I'm just going to name a few things here because I think there's a lot of resistance around this for valid reasons. You know, people want data and they want facts and they want to see and feel and touch because science has been very materialistic for many, many years. And I have degrees from Harvard and UCLA and, you know, all of these things that I have. Plus, I am super blessed that I have apprenticeship with people that have been doing this work for, you know, hundreds and hundreds of years and passed on from
Mhm.
generations. And so what I bring to you is like scientific experience, spiritual experience, just lived experience. And so the answers that I'm responding to you with right now is all of that combined. And the first thing I will just say is when you said, I believe that the ancestors are in the room, I I sensed that that was 100% true because I can sense your grandfather's presence is a huge presence. You know, it's a huge presence in your life. And I sense that it's a huge presence for you now, and how proud that spirit is of you and how proud they are to just help you. And really, what your grandfather, this is, I haven't done this before on a podcast, but I'll just, if you're open to this, what your
Yeah.
grandfather, the message from your grandfather really is, you're doing this all by yourself. We're just here loving you from behind. Like you're saying you're calling him for help, but he's just there behind you, loving you and
Yeah, he
reminding you
is.
that you can do it by yourself. But yeah, so what I will just say, yeah, the veil is thin. And I think whenever the veil is super thin, so like if somebody dies, for example, like you mentioned, and then life is able to come because the veil thins out at those times. And so we're able to get more support because even humans are more open. You know, people that
Mhm.
are super closed to all of these things, let's say you have your mother die or your father die, and all of a sudden you start seeing things like, oh, I just saw a bird, or I just saw this, or a rainbow over there. And like, I know that's a message from my mom all of a sudden.
Mhm.
Whereas before, you probably would have never have thought that. You probably would have poo-pooed an idea like that. But the more and more you get connected to something bigger than yourself, the more you realize that we are all really, really connected. And all around us, there's like the most beautiful, magical, mystical things that are always happening. And I call it the language of the heart, which is the
Mm.
language that the universe speaks to us in. And it's can be also called synchronicities. You know, whenever we notice, like you notice a synchronicity that when somebody dies, somebody like in that person's life, that person's able to now get pregnant. Whoa, that's weird. That and if we release the concept of it being weird and just are open to the concept of it just being a miracle,
Mhm.
or maybe we can call it like call it just gratitude if you're not open to a miracle, like wow, that's a little okay, well that happened.
Yeah.
That's fascinating and I'm so happy, like I'm so grateful that it happened. But just be open to knowing that, again, this is, I think this is one of the reasons why I've been able to surrender so much, is because I'm just so open to knowing that what's supposed to happen is going to happen. And that's just the way it is. And you
Mhm.
know, in that, you know, I was an activist for many, many years. And as an activist, once an activist, always an activist. And I believe like I'm here to empower others to really be their best. And for a long time, it was fighting for themselves, fighting for their rights, fighting for, I did a lot of poverty elimination work and racial justice work. And what I've come to understand is now at this stage of my life, it's not necessarily to fight against others, because I firmly believe karma is going to happen. You know, if you are
Mhm.
doing something you're not meant to do, whether it's this lifetime or another lifetime, things are going to work themselves out because that's a universal law. And it's not my job to force that to happen in my lifetime because it's going to make me feel good. You know, that's if I really surrender and believe that things are going to write themselves out because that's just karma. That's what will happen.
Yeah.
And so, and I believe that. I firmly believe that. And the thing about belief is this: we've gone kind of a million different ways, but the thing about belief is this: anything you believe is what you are practicing. Whatever you believe. If you're believing that you're never going to get pregnant, that's your practice. You're going to believe it for the rest of your life and you're going to probably create that. If you believe I will become a parent, somehow
Mhm.
I'm going to become a parent, that's another belief. Both of those beliefs are things that you are creating. And as I think Ford said this, whether you believe you can or you cannot, it's true. Whether you
Right.
can't or you can, like you, whatever you believe, you're going to create. And so some people say beliefs are delusional. Yes, all beliefs are delusional. Everything you believe, you are making up, but you are also making up. You are also creating. And so why not
Mhm.
believe the best? Why not believe the best is coming for you? Why not believe that you're going to get taken care of, that you're going to create what you want? Why not believe that? Why not?
Mhm.
Like, who cares? Why not feel good all the time? Like,
Yeah.
life is so short. Why not feel joy and love and happiness and like expansiveness and ecstasy? Why not? Like, it feels so good. So that's what I've just chosen to do. I've chosen to do that for myself and to do my best to help other people do that. People that want to do that, that come to me for help, I'm like, yeah, you want to feel good? Let's do it. Like, why not feel good? Why not heal all of those wounds? Why not release all of that?
Yeah. That makes so much sense. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you're right. Like the beliefs are thoughts we practice over time. And I always say, if my brain is going to work against me, why not let it work for me? But it takes some thoughtfulness and some intention to say, okay, and like you said in the beginning, let's shine a light on that 95%. Let's just uncover what's there because so much of it is just going on subconsciously. But when we shine a light on it, then we can actually choose, is this what I want to be thinking and feeling, or is there a different way? And that's also part of what you help people do as well. I know, Vanessa. So tell us about your practice and how you empower women and humans, people, and where people can find you.
Yeah, I primarily hang out on Instagram at Vanessa Calderon MD and on my podcast, The Authentic Path. It's called The Authentic Path with Vanessa Calderon. I think it's with Dr. Vanessa Calderon. I think that's what the official title is, but you can find it anywhere. The Authentic Path Podcast.com. Yeah, I essentially help women. They're all professionals, doctors, lawyers, engineers, essentially. I help professional women feel better and create their dreams and desires. And whether that's a business, whether that's generating wealth, whether that's being an entrepreneur, starting an online business. And all of it comes through this beautiful path of coming home to yourself. And to come home to yourself, there's healing that gets to happen, and I feel like I've have all these special gifts I get to give back to the world, and at the core of all of it is healing. I come from a long indigenous line of healers, and lo and behold, here I am as a healer. I thought my path was
Yeah.
to be a Western doctor, and so I did all of that. And I'm so grateful to have those tools. And I still practice clinically because I absolutely love it. And I realize there's so much more to a human soul, to their spirit, to all of them than what we can see with medicine. Like, I think about all the patients that come in with abdominal pain, and 95% of abdominal pain is NOS, abdominal pain, NOS. That's how we diagnose it. And chest pain, the same thing. Like, we don't know why you're having abdominal pain or chest pain. We don't know in the like Western medicine. But what if there were other tools to help you figure out what's happening and to help you heal so you no longer have to have chronic pain or have all of these other things? And so it's such a gift what I get to do. I just think about, in the indigenous beliefs that I practice, we believe that time is not linear, but that time is circular. And so what that means is when you heal for yourself, Erica and Vanessa, like when we heal for ourselves, we are healing the generations that came before us and also the generations that come after us. And there's Newtonian kind of conceptual thoughts of time, which is that time is also not linear, but that time exists in multiple dimensions. So there's multiple dimensions happening at the same exact time. And now I know this is getting a little meta over here, but I named that because when you heal in this dimension, you're healing all these other dimensions and going backwards and forwards and all these other things. And it is just the most powerful experience. Think about the butterfly effect, when one butterfly flaps their wings, how impactful that can be, and backwards and forwards and in all of these dimensions. And so that's exactly what's possible when one human decides, I don't like the way I feel anymore. I don't like feeling stressed or burnt out or exhausted or overgive or over responsible or guilty or ashamed. I don't like this anymore. I want something different. And as soon as you decide that, I help you feel better. And on the way to feeling better, boy, do you feel better. You feel great. You feel
You feel
home.
great. And like you said, yes, it heals past, and I've healed past wounds and traumas. And the goal is, well, the goal, I mean, it sounds very, Western, but the intention is for anybody who is doing this work to become parents. And let's talk about what happens when we heal our own wounds. Fertility is just the access point. Business development is just the access point for your people, right? that then has a ripple effect to all the generations which are going to happen after that. And I think when I think about that, the thought of the impact and what that is, that's just like so incredibly powerful. It blows my mind to think about the ripple effect of future generations. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, it's so interesting you say that, Erica. I think about parents that have become parents through fertility and the journey you had to take, the surrender, the peace, like everything you had to do, and the type of parent you become because
Yeah.
you were able to go through that journey. That's really
Yes.
incredibly powerful, to think
Yes.
about that.
And the love story, I think
Mhm.
people say, should I disclose this to my child? Should I? And I say, this is a love story. I mean, people need to do whatever they feel most comfortable with. There's emerging data about what is, the most helpful for people at different stages and such. But I think that to say you are so loved, you look at what we did to bring you here. I love that angle because it is you watch this happen over time, and to know that somebody was so wanted and so loved, I think is a huge blessing. So with that, is
That's
there
so
anything
beautiful.
else? Thank you. I know it's just these things come to me because you see it. You talking about capital T truths. There's the pictures of the babies with all the. Have you seen these pictures of all the needles around them? Right, of all the injections and all of the appointments and all of the
Mm.
everything. It's just, oh my goodness, it's just like it's truly a love story. So with
Mm.
that, is there anything else you want our listeners to hear before we say goodbye for now? Because we know this is not the
Yeah,
end.
I mean, honestly, just a deep bow of gratitude to you, Dr. Erica, and everything you bring to this world and to your clients and the people that work with you. Man, they have no idea how lucky they are because you're not paying me to say this. You didn't ask me to say this either, but I will just say, knowing you personally, knowing you professionally, knowing the passion, the love, the deep, like everything that you bring to your practice, to your connection with each one of your clients and your patients, like it is what a gosh, what a gift. For all of you listening, you again, Erica didn't ask me to say this, but for all of you listening, like if you are really looking for a fertility, like a partner, really like a partner with you on this journey that is compassionate and brilliant and smart and intelligent, is going to bring you all of these gifts together. Wow, I wouldn't think of anyone else besides you. I just deep bow gratitude for you and everything you
Thank
bring.
you. Thank you. Thank you for that. And I'm so grateful to do this work. And it's working. I mean, it's just the magic is happening and the community is growing. And I'm so very grateful. And I'm so grateful to know you and how you transform my life with the way that I think about the world and power and being a woman and what wealth actually means. And thank you for that, because you are indeed one of a kind, and you are it's you and all your ancestors, and it just every time I talk with you, I just like I feel your power. It's so beautiful. So thank you, Dr. Vanessa. Thanks for being a guest here, and can't wait to share this with the audience. Okay. And to my loves, you know how much I love you. Until the next time. Bye.